My psychotic father lost custody of us because my mother turned them in for their substance issues. Then, once my father gets out of prison, we have a restraining order against him that he keeps violating and even breaks into the house that I'm in to get what he wants. So, we make his life a living nightmare. We get him sent to jail so many times that he almost gets clean. And we did it all in a creative way. Here's what happened. Subscribe to Am I the Jerk on YouTube and hit the bell to turn on notifications. My dad is not a good person by any means of the word. Here's some background. Way back when Cayenne, my older sister, was born, my dad had already fallen off the wagon. The first thing he ever did was physically force my mom into doing substances to make sure that she stayed with him. Following her birth, things only got worse. While my mom would do what she could, my dad was unhappy about having a kid. He'd lock Cayenne in her room for days at a time, because obviously you can't make crystals while you're hearing how hungry your child is. 2 years later, my mom was pregnant with my twin brother Ryan and me. She immediately tried quitting all of the substances and had some success, but having the junk in our system, we were at serious risk. Ryan and I were born with huge complications, premature, barely breathing, and weakened immune systems. After that came one of the worst few months for mom to endure. While having one kid made dad angry, having three made him completely fly off the handle. It was at this time that mom made the hard decision to call DCFS on herself, which is the Department of Children and Family Services. She knew that we weren't safe and wanted a way for us to escape the situation. Mom willingly signed away her rights to us, and dad of course wanted to fight. Both were arrested for the environment they created for us in the house, as well as the substances. Don't cook crystals with kids in the house. It took 4 years and hundreds of letters for mom to get into rehab. As this was happening, my siblings and I lived with our grandmother, who we grew up calling mom. My grandmother had no intention of fully adopting us, but she was left with little choice after a few years. It was either adopt us or we would be taken into DCFS care. Life was better for us mostly. There's a reason I never mentioned my adoptive father, and we were safe. After a few years in rehab, mom was able to get back in touch with us. She was welcomed, and I ended up crying because I found out my adoptive mom wasn't my real mom. We did get to leave kindergarten early the day she came home though. We grew as a family and it was good. After a few years of this, my adoptive father left the picture. Now everything is actually great. My grandmother passed away in 2017. This was hard for everybody, but especially for my mom. She was devastated, losing the one person who believed she could become clean, a good person and a great mother. Now, dad gets out of prison and goes back in every few years. He usually tries to get in touch when he does. This year was different. We didn't have our grandma to make sure that everything would stay safe, and mom didn't think that she could handle seeing him. Here's the mistake. The day comes to bury my grandmother. It was a particularly warm November day. We are all having a hard time and don't deal with grief too well. I stayed with mom the entire time while Ryan went to our other grandparents to help out. Cayenne stayed in her room the whole time. We occasionally checked in on her. Night falls, and we are looking to roll pictures of grandma. We are finally able to stop crying. That is, until we hear some heavy banging on her front door, followed by it swinging open, and in walks dad. He goes straight to Cayenne's room, and mom is simply frozen. This is the first time I've ever seen her this way. He eventually leaves on his own after some screaming and making Cayenne cry. He ended up taking her money and swiping her. Dusty, our stepdad, has called the police already. We have a police scanner. Dusty has been outside the whole time, and as soon as dad left, he went to confront him. Mom had to snap herself out of that frozen state and called Dusty inside. She didn't know if dad was armed or anything and didn't want to take any chances. Dad goes across the street and pulls stuff out of his pocket as the cop pulls up. He was dumping his bath salts right in front of the cop. He ends up arrested, and we get a restraining order. This is not the last we see of him though. Over the next few years, we hatch a plan to make sure he regrets ever threatening our family. Here is the plan. The plan we managed to come up with was initially supposed to be petty and mildly inconvenient, but it ended up being so much more. We were just going to call the police every week or so on him. If he had something he wasn't supposed to have, back to jail. That didn't work out as planned, and the turnout was much more severe. When dad gets out of prison, he lives with his mom. Now the problem with this is we regularly go visit our grandparents, which means he'd either have to leave or we couldn't go. I'm going to call my other grandma Nana to keep things a bit more coherent. Nana would always make him lead if we came over, no matter what temperature, time, or weather conditions. This would also apply to whenever we would stay the night. We visited Nana so much after knowing what she'd do to see us. This was just our way of saying screw you to our dad. The thing about this meant that he was essentially homeless. He didn't have a car and you could barely find a job. When a job did hire him, he'd post in, or Nana would tell us. We'd give them a call and have them do a drug test. He always failed the drug test. So now he's essentially homeless, having the police call on him, and substances. He gets tired of this pretty quickly and goes back to Nana's when we are there. A clear violation of the restraining order, so he gets fined. mind, this isn't a meager amount of money either. This ruined his savings. So now he's also broke and got kicked out of Nana's. So now he's starting to realize that he's in a pretty bad spot. We call the police for a suspicious man sleeping on the sidewalk, and he had his substances on him. Back to jail. At least he has a bed. After a few times of this, he is finally broken, devoid of all hope. He manages to get Nana to let him stay there again, so now we get more updates. This has been going on for months now, and we weren't going to stop. Job, gone. Home, gone. Money, gone. Substances, gone. Hope, gone. He actually started to be clean for a bit. It's hard to get substances if you can't buy them, and when you do, they immediately get confiscated. That is, until he found a new woman. He gets back on the substances thanks to her money, so what do? Get her arrested while he's gone. We are being extra careful not to get him arrested anymore, since after so many times getting caught with substances in our state, he would get sent to federal. Now we've taken away his girlfriend too. The effect. All of this has worn him down. He's gone. Anytime he'd regain even a tiny bit of hope, we'd snuff it out. He eventually tried to snuff himself out with a side piece that he's not supposed to have, and he fails. So now we get to watch him suffer in the hospital while knowing he gets taken to prison as soon as he heals. We had to make things worse for him. We couldn't let the times we didn't call the police go unnoticed after all. We hid some substances/ingredients in his dresser, easily noticeable when the police come to search. He now has quite a while in federal prison. So am I the jerk for putting my dad through this after what he did to us? The unexpected outcome to this revenge plan was that the dad was clean. If it wasn't for the girlfriend coming in and resupplying him, he might have stayed clean, because even though they only mention the fact that, yeah, his substances get confiscated, the other end of it is, while he's in jail, he's probably a lot less likely to have access to substances, or at the very least in the quantities that he would have outside of jail. I mean, that's one way to force somebody to get clean, or if not fully clean, then at least cleaner, because if anything, he's involuntarily weaning himself off little by little each time this happens. I was also surprised by the foresight that the mother had. The mother realized she had no power in the situation, no control over what was going to happen, and also she had her own vices. She was already addicted to substances herself, but somehow had the self-awareness to realize that she was not equipped to handle the kids in this environment and call the DCFS in order to get the kids out of the situation. I mean, from their perspective, this whole thing could have been even worse had she not done this. I'm sure as a mother, she wanted to stay with the kids more than anything else, but she was putting their needs before her own. I'm actually kind of surprised between the tons and tons of stories that you guys have submitted and stories that we see on the channel in general that I've never actually seen this type of revenge happen, where you slowly chip away at someone by calling the police on them over and over again, not necessarily setting them up per se because they do have substances on them, but rather just repeatedly bringing awareness to the police so that they get arrested again and again. So if you were in this exact situation, how would you have handled it? And let me know, jerk or not a jerk, and why. I'm a 32-year-old female and I'm a gemologist. I spend my days in the lab testing and identifying stones. From the nature of my work, I also have a very large and valuable collection of jewelry, but also gem specimens that I keep in a safe that I specifically bought and had installed to keep them safe. I also have a second smaller safe for keeping important papers and other documents. I own my home, and my boyfriend, who's 33 years old of 2 years, recently moved in as he was renting before. I gave him the code to the smaller safe so that he could put valuables in it, but he also wants the code for my gem safe, not to put anything in it, but he says because we're living together now, I should trust him and give him the code. I've said no, because he has no reason to open that safe, as the only thing it's used for is storing my collection. He says he has no interest in my gem collection, he doesn't want to look at them, but still wants the code to access them. This is causing tension because he says I should give it to him as a show of trust, and I say no, because he has literally no reason to go in there, so he doesn't need the code. This is a 6-figure collection we're talking about, so I'm not being overly difficult over a few little gems here. I am the only one who knows the code. There was a short edit in the future that says, I'm sticking to my guns and I'm not giving him the code. All of you lovely internet strangers are right. It's a huge marinara flag, and I'll be telling him to pack his stuff. I'll update you later. Thank you for all your responses. Then in the next update, since this keeps coming up, the safe weighs nearly half of a ton. It's bolted to the floor and the wall, and is from a company who makes safes, vaults, and strong rooms for jewelers. You could bring the house down around it and it would still be intact. I may have phrased it badly, but all of the gems and jewelry in the safe are mine and mine alone. I do not keep any clients' jewelry at home. For my other businesses, I do valuations. I rent a separate space and keep client items there. I've checked for cameras. Thank you for the suggestions, people. And there aren't any, aside from the ones that I already have fitted, which he doesn't have access to. I've moved all my personal documents out of the little safe and into my gem safe. I've told my colleague what I'm doing, and she's gonna come around for when I do it. So after some more time passed, jumping into the future, there was an update. I probably didn't emphasize in my last post that we had a couple of conversations about about this and me explaining why he had no reason to go in there, etc. The short version is I told him he isn't getting the code and I will die on this hill. He has no reason to have it, and his continued lack of respect by pushing the boundaries wasn't okay. I felt like he was trying to manipulate me by making it about trust. After a lot of back and forth, he finally admitted that he wanted to have access to the safe because he didn't feel like I was sharing the whole house with him, because I insisted on a tenant agreement rather than just letting him move in. And he didn't like that part of where he lived was off limits to him. He was also insecure and resented that I have more money than him and I own my own home whilst he doesn't. He had made a few comments about this before, but I didn't realize that it was such a big issue for him. He also said that by keeping him out of the safe, it made him feel like I thought he was lesser than me and that it made him feel like I was treating him like a child. I told him if that's how he feels, then this is not the right relationship for either of us and that it was best we break up. He was shocked that I was ending things over this. He cried and then asked me to reconsider. When I said no, he got angry and he called me a stuck-up bee. He said he was better off without me anyway and went to his friend's house. I told him via text he had 30 days before he had to leave, as per the tenant agreement, so he didn't need to stay at friends. He said that he would be gone by the end of the week. 2 days later, he came back and packed up all of his stuff and left. He's staying with his friend now. I've changed all the locks. I have an alarm and a CCTV system that's professionally monitored, and I have changed the verbal password I have to give when you call up as a precaution. I've checked all my collection and it hasn't been touched. I also took your guys' advice and I'm giving my solicitor the code and safe deposit details to be passed to my executor in the event of my death. I feel horrible because despite all of this, I love him, but lots of the comments said how I should have a partner who not only respects my boundaries but takes an interest in my passions, and that really got to me because it's true. So many people reached out to me with questions and it made me so happy but also sad because he never asked me stuff like that. I think this is what pushed me over the edge to end it more than anything. I'm pretty torn up right now and I'm missing him, but I know I'll be okay. I have great friends and family around me, and diamonds are a girl's best friend, and I have a few knocking around to help cheer me up. So, was I the jerk for not giving my boyfriend the code to my safe? It seems like the consensus that a lot of people seem to have is that having him know the code only adds more of a security risk or security vulnerability that you don't really need to have for any reason. Even the top response was the boyfriend was going to casually flex this gem collection around the wrong group of people, guaranteed. I've had first-hand experience being around valuables, and it's always better not to know the code. Owning nice jewelry, watches, and handbag, etc. is great, but the worst possible feeling is being responsible for other people's money. Yeah, in a case like this, if something were to ever go wrong and you are the only other person that knows the code, by default, you're going to be the one that is at the top of the list, the people responsible for what happened. So the question that I have for you guys, if it was this exact same situation, but instead of being boyfriend and girlfriend, they were married, would that make a difference? Let me know your answer if they're boyfriend and girlfriend, and also if they were married. But most importantly, jerk or naughty jerk, and why? Am I the jerk for telling my wife that she doesn't need to be with her sick friend at the hospital? So my wife has a friend from childhood, Anthony. I'm being completely honest here when I say that he and I do not get along. It's not like he's rude or disrespectful, nothing like that, but all I feel towards him is annoyance, sort of speak, because of how much my wife sees him. He lives alone and now suffers from a medical condition, cancer, that requires him to go to the hospital regularly to receive treatment. I found out that my wife promised to go with him to every chemo treatment as support. She said it's a commitment she made to be there for him during this rough time since he has no one else besides him. Okay, I had no issue with that at first, but then this started affecting me. For example, I can't go see my friends because I have to stay with my son on X day so my wife could be with Anthony for his treatment, etc., etc. I've talked to her about it, but she said that Anthony needs the company and that she's just being supportive, and this is when he needs her the most. I let it go, but last week was just my last straw. Anthony had another chemo session treatment and my wife wanted to go with him and asked me to stay home with our son. I told her I had to meet up with my mom and sister to eat lunch and that I won't be home. She said she needed to be with him, and I kind of flipped out at her and said that she didn't need to be with him and could literally go see him at home the next day or something. She threw a fit and called me cruel for forcing her to leave Anthony by himself since she's all that he has and that I was making her look bad. She also said that my appointment with mom and sister wasn't as important as a chemo session, but I decided to just leave to end the argument. She ended up staying at home but kept ignoring me when I got back, calling me selfish for not letting her be there to support Anthony with what he's going through. Some of her girlfriends think that I'm being a controlling jerk with no consideration for Anthony and what he's going through. So, am I the jerk? I think that for those of you guys that have had someone in your life that has gone through cancer, you'll probably realize that it is horrible. It is beyond awful. I can't tell if the husband, the original poster here, is trying to imply that there's something fishy going on, but it doesn't seem like that at all from the story. I don't think that the wife is having an affair with the guy who is going through the chemo treatments here, but maybe he's not even implying that. Maybe he's just saying that this mild inconvenience of not being able to do exactly what he wants wants to do when he wants to do it is more important than someone who his wife dearly cares about to not be alone during a terrible part of his life. Maybe I'm a little too biased with having personal experiences with people in my life that have gone through this, but I think this guy just lacks all empathy entirely. But how do you see this? Let me know down below, jerk or not a jerk, and why. Am I the jerk for singing a song to my wife at our wedding and making her angry? I just got married last week. My wife and I are both in our 30s. I am Mexican and she is American, but we both grew up in the United States and both of our families know both languages. My wife planned every bit of the wedding and was very controlling and a nervous bride, but alright, I get that she was stressed. During the reception, I went to the band and asked them to play a song for me to sing to my new wife. It was Te Amare by Miguel Bosé. It was the song from our first date in a really bad Mexican restaurant, so it just became a long-standing joke between us. The guests really loved the song. My mother-in-law cried and told me that it was beautiful, but my wife, my bride, she seemed upset. I asked her what's wrong and she said that I am a jerk for taking the spotlight to enforce my ethnicity and not just letting the band sing our songs for us. Am I the jerk? Enforce his ethnicity? That is a really weird thing to say to somebody. The song, according to the original poster, has a meaning between them, so why would you think that he just tried to enforce his ethnicity? What is the context there, if there is any context at all? It sounded like he was just trying to do something that was really thoughtful, and he probably practiced a lot for this, but the wife wasn't into it at all for some reason. She probably wanted it exactly like it was in her mind, and in her mind, there was no singing from the groom. So let me know what you think, jerk or not a jerk, and why. When you subscribe, make sure to hit the bell to turn on notifications. To finish listening to all the stories in this series, use the playlist at the top of the description. And next time you live stream, use the cream of the crop music. Search for Cream of the Stream on Spotify or whatever music platform you use for copyright-free music to use for your stream. It's free, Cream of the Stream. Either way, thanks a lot for listening. I'll see you guys next time.